very good morning to all our viewers. This is Market Café right here on ET Now. I'm Srishti Sharma and with me is Kanishka Sarkar. And in the next 1 hour, we're going to be talking about all the big headlines that we are tracking this particular morning, the big stories, and also talk about the trade setup for today's market action. But with this, let's get started. And firstly, let's talk about the U.S. markets. Just yesterday, we have seen a bit of a resilience coming in for the U.S. markets. It was a day in the green. Indeed, when it comes to Dow Jones, it was almost 0.3% gain coming in on that particular index. Even S&P 500 and Nasdaq ended the day in the green after that sell-off that we have seen recently. But in terms of the movers, some of the earnings candidates were indeed in focus. It was IBM that was seen to be declining. Tesla too declined more than 5% in yesterday's trading session after missing the profit estimates. So all in all, a decent day coming in for the U.S. markets. The energy stocks were seen to be leading the gain while the tech faced some bit of a pressure after disappointing earnings that we just talked about. And yes, that was about the U.S. markets as of now. The U.S. futures are a bit steady. Markets are definitely waiting by to see the CPI report card, and the kind of impact that it can make on the markets is something that we will be watching out for. But indeed, the investors are awaiting the Trump and Xi Jinping meeting next week, and that's about the markets when it comes to the U.S. markets as well. But Kanishka, seems like the markets are finding some ground, but there's so much that is going on when it comes to the crude oil prices.
Absolutely. Lots of global cues weighing on, crude prices. In fact, oil prices are headed for their biggest weekly gain since June. This is after fresh U.S. sanctions on major Russian producers, Rosneft and Lukoil. Now, this has triggered concerns over global supply, and that's leading the prices higher. Brent is trading near the $66 per barrel, whereas the WTI, that is hovering close to the $62 per barrel mark. Now, both have surged after a 5% jump in the previous session that they saw. Russian crude exports to India, they are also expected to drop. Now, though China's response, that remains uncertain. So that's something that we are watching out for. Now, apart from that, OPEC has also signaled readiness to boost output if at all it is needed going forward. And that is warning of potential price volatility. So let's see how the prices go on from here on. But as of now, it's headed for a big weekly gain. But now let's also put the spotlight on the yellow metal. Now, gold, that edged up higher about 0.3% to that $4,108 per ounce level. That's after steep losses that we saw earlier in the week. Now, remember, the metal is stabilizing as investors were easing geopolitical tensions and potential U.S.-China trade deal. But, there is a lot of uncertainty still that continues to persist as far as U.S.-China trade deal is concerned. But yes, some easing is what we are seeing right now. Now, despite the pullback that gold has recently seen, gold remains up about 55% for the year, that is 2025. That's, of course, supported by safe haven demand and expectations of further Fed rate cuts. So, yes, that's something that we are watching out for as far as crude and gold prices are concerned, Srishi.
Right, interesting moves out there. But while equities celebrate the optimism, hard assets tell a different story, wherein Manish Shukani decodes what gold, silver and real estate are really signaling right now and why balancing the fear and hope